Welcome to Garden Sanity. I'm Laura and I garden here in Zone 7, Southern New Jersey. And today's video is called Saving Struggling Plants, a Backyard Garden Refresh. And the reason why is because not only did I save a few struggling plants over here that I'd shown you in my deep dive of the front yard video about 3-4 weeks ago in September. It's now early October. But I also saved some struggling plants in the backyard in the circle bed, my beloved circle bed that I was a newly planted bed last year, but not doing great. So I've had to dig up and move a lot of those plants. And where they all ended up was in the backyard bed with the limelight hydrangea tree, which of course was another previous video I recently did showing you an emergency pruning. So everything's been struggling, but I'm trying to move things around. In the process, I completely revamped and refreshed that back garden bed with the limelight hydrangea tree. So I can't wait to show you a before and after. In fact, here's the before. And the after is coming soon, and it looks much fuller. I won't say it looks beautiful because when you're transplanting struggling plants, they still look struggling. And so the hope and the dream is that next year they're going to do very well. Now, the other things I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to tell you and show you probably one of the best Arborvitae tips. And I have emerald green Arborvitaes, but this will definitely hold true for any type of Arborvitae you have. And then I'm also going to show you a new plant I planted that I got from Proven Winners. They asked me to trial this for them. And it's called Poco Loco Abelia. It's an adorable shrub, only gets 2 to 3 feet tall and wide, has beautiful color. I can't wait to show that to you as well. So let's get started. So across from these knockout roses are my emerald green Arborvitaes. In front of those are the beautiful little lime hydrangeas, looking beautiful and pink in the sunlight. And I show this to remind you that emerald green Arborvitaes not only are great for privacy, but they're also great as a backdrop in your gardens. Now this is what's left of the black-eyed Susans, but a month ago, here's what they looked like, and they were beautiful. And look how they just made such a nice combination with the emerald green Arborvitaes. Here's my number one tip about Arborvitaes. Now, I did a video on how to care for them, and I'll link that above, and I'll link it below in the description area, so scroll down after the video to find that video to watch. This tip I'm giving you is not in that video, but it will be in just about any other time I talk about emerald green Arborvitaes in a garden setting, not just as a privacy fence screening. The number one tip is if you are going to add these to a garden bed and you plan on planting any plants in front of them, you better do it at the same time or the same season. So these little lime hydrangeas are doing great. They were planted actually before the emerald green Arborvitaes went in. So these hydrangeas had already gotten established, and then we added the emerald green Arborvitaes. What I tried to do last year was I tried to add a quick fire in that hole and a firelight in this hole. And here's a video clip just to remind you of how horrible they looked. So they got hit with black spot. They just weren't getting as much water from the sprinkler head that is right there. But then when it came time to dig these out, I mean, I dumped some weeds and stuff in here, but I want you to see this. This is a root. This is something I dug up. This is the other part of that root. I mean, look at that. And then look at all this. These are all roots from the Arborvitaes. Arborvitaes have deep roots, but they have a ton of shallow roots, and those roots just spread everywhere because Arborvitaes love water. They love to seek out water, and they will stay on the surface. So this was where the firelight was. I was able to dig that out, but this guy, this was the quick fire, and boy, oh boy, did we have some trouble with that. It was a little quick fire, actually. I had to get my husband to help, and we couldn't even dig out that much of it. It's really a shame. So my number one tip, when you're considering adding emerald green Arborvitaes to a garden bed, add them at the same time you're adding shrubs, or add them after you've added the shrubs and perennials you want. Otherwise, you are going to be fighting, and I am not exaggerating, fighting all of the roots. It's crazy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean this up a little bit, but I'm going to leave the holes for now, and I'll just put chicken wire cloches over them for the fall. And then I'll decide. I had thought I was going to put a Miss Molly butterfly bush here. I thought that would look really pretty. It doesn't need as much water and would look really pretty in front of the arborvitaes. But I'm going to strongly try to think what I want to do, because whatever goes in here needs to stay and not come back out. I mean, it just is a losing battle otherwise. And I really have to rethink this. It may be better to just plant some shallow-rooted perennials here. Maybe better to just sprinkle some seeds of flowers and let them grow here. So I have a lot to think about, but I hope you take this tip to heart. So before I take you over to the limelight hydrangea tree bed, I want to talk about the circle bed, which is this bed. And I planted this last May, a year ago, so that would be May 2023, so a year and a few months. And as you'll see, there's a lot of holes in this bed. I ended up digging up the pink carpet azaleas that are ground cover azaleas. They just struggled like crazy. I ended up digging up the 2 dwarf fothergillas because they were struggling. And I ended up, where you see that blue pot, I dug up the double white Perfectamundo azalea as well, also struggling. Disaster. Even these beautiful Veronicas weren't doing that great. Now, I admit, the culprit not only is the sun, which is out of my control, you know, well, it's in my control if I choose to plant something here or not, but it's these darn bark chips. You know, I had such high hopes for them. They just do not break down. I mean, look at these things. They don't break down at all. They fade, but I don't even know how many decades it would be for these to actually break down into the soil. And that's no good, in part because there is a sprinkler. You know, you see it right there. So there is a sprinkler, but it's not penetrating, the water's not penetrating through this bark mulch. I mean, it would have to really pour rain to get through all of these layers of bark mulch. So bark mulch is going to come out of this bed, and I'm going to leave it for the fall, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. This is a beautiful dogwood tree that is happy here, and it's absolutely beautiful, and I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled that it's happy because I don't want to move it. I also have a Hosta Echo the Sun. It's part of the Shadowland series from Walter's Gardens and Proven Winners back here. And then the final thing is this reminiscent rose, and this is a pink rose. I'll show you what it looked like in the springtime. It put on a growth spurt. I had a little bit of rose color I was excited about, but then nothing. And it's possible that it might have been too hot, which I don't quite think. It loves full sun. So I'll tell you what I think it is. I think it's that, again, the bark mulch wasn't doing it any favors. The color for the most part was healthy, a little brighter than I would like. Here it is from the other side. So again, I think once I remove the bark mulch and then rethink this bed over the winter time, I'm definitely going to keep this rose here. I think it'll do much better without the bark mulch. In fact, I almost guarantee it. And over here, I think I'm going to plant another rose that would be a climbing rose that would be on a trellis. A little obelisk, I think, would be really pretty here because it does get a lot of sun, and I think it'll do well. And then I'm going to use the rest of the winter to figure this out. So now let's go and look at this limelight hydrangea tree bed. So this is the bed before. And again, it looks a little empty. What I had done so far, when you see this picture, is I had taken away all of the pine bark chip mulch, which is really, really hard for me to have that roll off my tongue. Pine bark chip mulch. There, I did it. So this is what it looks like without that. And this is what it looks like this morning. Okay, so I'm kind of in the shadows. Doesn't matter. What matters is the plants. I want you to see those. So this plant and this plant are the 2 that I just took over the weekend from up in the front yard, brought them back here. This is a little quick fire, and this one and the firelight both were hit with spider mites, the firelight horribly so, and they really struggled. And as I showed you, they struggled because of all those arborvitae roots. I think was part of the reason, is they just didn't have enough room to grow on their own through the soil without getting impacted by other roots I don't know if impacted is even the right word, but the roots had nowhere really to go. So I had a hard time digging this one out. My husband had to help me, and I hate asking him because I always like to feel like I can do things myself, but this one I struggled with. I was able to get this one out, which was great, and I felt really empowered. This one I couldn't do it, and the best we could do was slice it not as deep as we wanted to. So the original pot, you know, was a gallon pot. Well, you don't know, I'm telling you. I hate when people say, you know, and then it's like, well, no, I don't know. Anyway, so it was a gallon pot, but I probably only got about half of that out. So the roots on this one are very, very small, and they're really going to need some time to adjust. So Biotone went in all these holes to help out with that process, but no fertilizer or anything, not till next spring. But Biotone does have a little bit of fertilizer in it, but it'll help the roots get established. So that's the little quickfire. So the next thing we have is the firelight hydrangea. And this is the one that really got hit badly with spider mites. But as you can see here, these newer leaves are beautiful, healthy green. So I'm really hopeful for this one. This one seemed to transplant pretty well. I mean, they've only been in the ground since Sunday, but they really seem like they've transplanted well. This one, and then I have a third one to show you back here. So you got the firelight, and you have this little quickfire. And then this is either a little quickfire or a quickfire, and I'll tell you that story in a minute, but just wanted to put it in context with where I am in this bed. So there are two little quickfire hydrangeas there, and then curving around the bed, there are two little quickfire hydrangeas right here. And then I added this one, which again is either a little quickfire or a quickfire. Long story short, I bought this about 2 years ago, got it from Home Depot, couldn't find a quickfire anywhere, and that's what I wanted. I wanted the taller size. So it came, I was really excited. I was in the process of planting it and then had to stop everything because the tag said it was a quickfire, but the pot said little quickfire. And I hope I have that right. I might have it opposite. But basically the tag said one thing, and then the Proven Winners pot said another. And so I stopped planting. I contacted my contact at Proven Winners and I asked her what to do. And she said, you know what? I don't know, because what Home Depot does is they contract out to buy plants from another wholesaler that grows them themselves. And so somewhere along the line in their process, the pot and or tag was mislabeled. So I don't know which one this is going to be. The funny thing about this is it looks pretty good, right? Remember when I had this in a pot? If you don't, I'll show you now. So I had it in a pot, was really good to it. It was wonderful. I moved it up by the house for the winter. It spent the winter outside. Pruned it in the spring. It was fine. And then I neglected it all summer. I would dump water every so often when I saw it was drying out. I kind of didn't want to deal with it because I didn't know where it was going to go. And so this guy has survived despite my neglect. And I apologize to this guy. I was apologizing to him while I was planting him. But he's got nice, healthy green leaves. And I love that. And in fact, that's the color that I more want these little quickfire hydrangeas to have. And again, why I think it's that case is the bark mulch wasn't doing any favors. It wasn't allowing, you know, the water to get all the way down. I think it needs better fertilizer and more compost. So again, that's what I'm doing with this bed. In about, oh, I don't know, maybe even I'll do it later this week, is just get some composted cow manure down on this bed over everything, mix in some soil where I need to, and then add some mulch, some regular mulch. So next is the Perfectamundo Double White Azalea. And this is what I mentioned seemed to also be struggling in the other bed. Now, what you can see are there are tons of buds on these. And I'm hopeful that the buds will still, see if you can see all of these buds. I'm hopeful that they'll still bloom. I don't know if they might be a little bit too much, you know, transplant shock. I'm hoping that's not the case. It seems like it's transplanted okay. What you do notice is how much brighter the green color is. It should be a nice, healthy, dark green, similar to what the Winter Gem Boxwood color is. So again, this needs some TLC I think it's going to do much better in this bed. It's going to get more of a dappled sunshine rather than the heat and hotness of the full sun it was baking in. It was just too much for it. In colder climates, it could probably handle more full sun, but as I've quickly learned, here in southern New Jersey, the sun is too hot for it. And this one, what I decided to do was I just trimmed off some of the leaves so that most of the plant is focusing on developing its roots this late in the season. So that's why it looks a little bit smaller than the other peppermint patty. But I love peppermint patty, and now I've got 2 of them. Just beautiful. These are the dwarf English boxwoods that I showed you in the springtime, how I pruned them back, and I gave them a hard pruning. And at the time, this one especially, let me put on the screen what it looked like. It was yellow, there were bare stems, and I told you I was really confident it was going to fill in. And sure enough, you can see that it's filled in nicely. And it's still got a ways to go. But I like that it filled in, and I'm definitely going to keep them more at this size. Makes a lot more sense. And this little guy is Capture the Flag, Heucherella or Heuchera. I can't quite remember which. I'll put it on the screen. But I decided to move him over here from the long bed because he was getting a little bit too much shade. And next to Capture the Flag is this beautiful variety I'm trialing for Walter's Gardens and Proven Winners. This is going to be available for retail in spring 2025. I think it's called Prom Gown. I will put the full name on the screen for you. It's got beautiful dark leaves, and they have a little bit of a rose color to them, and in the fall, as you can see here, they brighten up a little bit, and in the winter they're going to have nice color because these tend to keep their color. And in the spring they'll have flowers on them as well, so I'll be showing you how they look throughout the seasons, but this is already a plant that I think is beautiful. So this is the Poco Loco Abelia shrub I planted. Isn't it absolutely adorable? It's got green color, but it also has, besides the bright green, it's got hints of orange, almost maybe a little red. The stems are like a neat coral color. Well, what this does in the spring is the foliage is going to start out with an orange color, and then it's going to change to green, and the new growth is going to be pink. So this is going to be an interesting shrub to watch. And there's also going to be, as they tell me, fragrant pink flowers that are going to be in late spring to summer. So this is going to be quite an interesting little shrub, and it only gets to be 2 to 3 feet tall and wide. So this is a perfect little shrub to fit into your garden and not worry about it getting overgrown. It takes full to part sun, average water, nothing fancy. It would also make a great container plant if you were interested in that. So I'm really looking forward to trying this out for Proven Winners. I think it's going to be absolutely beautiful, at least in 3 seasons, and we'll see what it does in the wintertime as well. And behind the Poco Loco Abelia is Legend of the Small Fothergilla. Now this one I transplanted from the circle bed, and then this one over here I transplanted from the circle bed as well. They can handle full sun, not in this climate. So I think they need part sun, full sun. My Mount Airy Fothergilla in the front yard, that one's doing absolutely great in partial sun. So that's what I did with these. And the color that you see is changing. They have beautiful fall color. And so that's what's starting to happen now, is these are changing, but they should be looking much better by now. So hopefully they will be much happier here. So again, this is the Firelight Hydrangea, and the reason I'm back here again is I wanted to tell you real quick, for those of you that know this garden bed from previous videos, there's something missing. I took out the red bud stick. Yes, I did it. It was not doing anything. You know, I got a little bit of blooms on it. It was just a stick. It was never really going to grow into a legitimate red bud tree, and so out it came. And so, yes, it wasn't even worth me saving it in a pot. I just said, nope, I'm going to start fresh with a legitimate redbud tree once I decide on which variety, because I love them all. And so surrounding the Firelight Hydrangea are these beautiful Candy Love hellebores, and they will continue to stay here and provide evergreen color in the wintertime when there's basically just dried flowers on the panicle hydrangeas. And you know, this year I'm only going to have this one flower, but that's okay. In future years I'll have more. So that'll be nice evergreen color with flowers in the wintertime on the hellebores. And then down here, I transplanted the Jack of Diamonds brunneras that I had. And the reason I transplanted them is I had to make room for the panicle hydrangeas over there. They again will get partial sun. This bed's, I think it's around maybe 1 o'clock it starts getting in the shade. So this will be a nice spot for them. Jack of Diamonds, just to remind you if you're not familiar with brunnera, these are the gorgeous flowers in springtime. And they last and last. Really worth adding these to your spring garden for the spring flowers. And then despite how raggedy these are looking right now because they were just transplanted, they will have this beautiful, beautiful color. They do die back to the ground. And so if you're worried you're not going to find them next year, you can put some sticks down or some type of other marker, which I plan on doing so I can remember where they are. And then in this little pot, let's take a look at this little guy. This little guy is an Amori Rose Decentra, or Bleeding Heart. I planted 2 of these last year in this garden bed and they disappeared. So I planted this one this year and it barely did anything. So it was not in a great place. So I love this plant, but again, it should be much bigger, and I lost 2 in this bed already. I think shrubs are going to do better, or larger perennials in this bed, than this wee little guy did, but we'll see. I think he just needs a better spot, and I'll find that. And then one final plant I want to show you while I'm over here is this guy. So this is a burning bush. And I'm just not happy with it. I mean, it looks pretty now, right? We've got some pinks and reds and tannish green, yellow. I mean, the color is absolutely beautiful. So I'm keeping it for the fall color right now, but it's going to come out in the springtime. It needs a little more water than I'm willing to give it. I mean, I do have a sprinkler here, but I'd rather, where I have it focused is more on the hydrangeas. And so I'd rather put another shrub. You know, burning bush can be a little bit invasive. This does put out seeds, and so I think it's coming out and going away. I'm pretty sure there's a new seedless variety coming out, but I'm done. I'm done with this shrub. I'm gonna have fun during the winter picking out something that doesn't need as much water, that will look beautiful against the emerald green arborvitaes, because they're very big and very beautiful, and they deserve to have something very beautiful in front of it. So that's gonna also be a change. Now I'm on the other side of the burning bush. You can see we also have this gorgeous cedar tree that we grew from a tiny, tiny little seedling that we found in the garden. Over time it became nice and huge. And so on this side of the bed is the 4 little quickfires I had planted a couple years ago. So there's one there, and there's one there. And what I did now is I moved the pink carpet azaleas. So these are Perfecto Mundo double pink carpet azaleas. So they're a ground cover azalea looking really sad. Do you see why I moved them? I mean, these should be covered with leaves. Now they do look like they have some buds just starting, but I'm not going to get anything out of it this fall. A year ago, I did have beautiful color, and I'll put that on the screen so you can see what it looks like. Isn't that beautiful? So I'm not going to get that this year, and you know, it is what it is. I think they'll be much happier here. They're going to be in dappled sun at the most, and then shade, and I think that's going to be better for them. So there's the second little quickfire I mentioned, and then here's the 2 other pink carpet azaleas I put in. And so again, emptied out the circle bed. It happens. I'm not upset about it. It's a learning experience about just how hot our sun is and how awful pine bark mulch is. So this is the quickfire, little quickfire, not sure which. So it can have room to grow up a little bit taller. And then these are the 2 other little quickfires I had planted a couple years ago. And then this is a really old salvia. I don't even know what type. It blooms basically once. Cut it back, you get a few blooms. And then this is really pretty backlit like this, isn't it? Let me go around the other side so you can see this better. And the excuse was because the sun was also in my eyes. This is the lavender chiffon Rosa Sharon. I've waited forever for it to start getting to be this height. I've waited way too long. This one isn't even carried by proven winners anymore. They have an improved version called, I think it's called dark lavender chiffon. So this lavender chiffon, you know, they improved it and they got rid of this one. And I think I'm going to as well. I don't like it because unlike my Helene Rosa Sharon, which bloomed all summer, and I mean, it still has flowers on it. This is, you know, it put out some flowers and then kind of didn't do much. I'm just not impressed. So, on order, arriving soon, is a Pinky Winky Prime. That's what I really wanted. So I bought a Pinky Winky Prime. I have Pinky Winkies in the front, as you know, it's my favorite shrub. And the idea of an improved version, if you will, of Pinky Winky, and improved in the way they say is the color is more vibrant, size is a little bit larger. I want to try it out because why not, right? So that's going to go in the spot where the Rosa Sharon is. And I think it's going to look stunning to have that midsummer beautiful panicle hydrangea flowers against the emerald green arborvitaes. It's going to look really stunning. And it'll look stunning next to the limelight hydrangea tree, which if you watched my video on emergency pruning, this is what happened. It really took a beating this year, and I ended up cutting off a lot of the dead stuff and the yellow leaves. So it looks kind of sad right now, but you do see still there are some green leaves, and there is a lot of healthy new, I wouldn't say healthy new growth, but newer growth, and some of it is more towards the top. But at this time of year, you've got the flowers dried a little bit prematurely this year because we've just not had any rain in about 2.5 weeks. Really crazy. I know some people are dealing with horrible, horrible flooding, and we have nothing. I've had to run the sprinklers, I think, more this fall than I've had to in the summer, which is crazy. So this will get a good pruning next spring when I always do my pruning, but that's how it looks now. And if you can imagine a beautiful limelight hydrangea tree with a beautiful Pinky Winky Prime next to it, it's going to look absolutely beautiful with these lower panicle hydrangeas around it. So in front of the little quickfire hydrangeas, you have two Amsonia blue stars, and there is one there and this larger one here. And they usually get a beautiful yellow color as we go into the fall, but we've had such a drought that they're doing okay, but not that great. I'm not worried about it in the least. These are beautiful shooting star hellebores, which are just, I'm just loving these. Just put out beautiful flowers in the winter into spring. This is a Mediterranean pink heath. And as I mentioned in the front yard with my Kramer's red, same thing. All that bright green growth you see, the bright green little dots everywhere, that is all flower buds. This is going to be in full bloom winter into spring. It's not as vibrant as Kramer's red. Mediterranean pink is a more muted pink. It's absolutely beautiful. Over here is the pufferfish hydrangea. So this was planted a year ago. So it was planted in fall of 2023. So this completed its first year. And you know what? The growth was really good. It got nice and bushy. Flowers were very small, but as you can see, there were a lot of flowers on it. And I do have high hopes for this. This is one of those where you have to, you know, this was its, I guess, sleep year, where it's getting established underground, puts out some growth. Next year will be the creep, where it gets bigger, and then the third year should be the leap, where it just looks stunning. So keep you posted on that one, of course. And then this is Calamaris that I will cut back a little bit for the fall. I usually cut it back to where you see some of this newer green growth. I'll just cut that part off, but I leave it for the spring, so I don't cut it all the way down. And I have one there, and I have one here. And what I might actually do is I might divide them. So I'm still thinking about that, is if I'm going to do that now or in the spring. I don't know. We'll see how much time I have. And then, of course, this is the infamous overgrown, not so much anymore, winter gem boxwood. I would like to cut this back even more. You can see it's put out a lot of new growth. If I go down like this, you can see a lot of the new growth that just kind of shot up. But I'd like to trim that back even a little bit more. We'll see. a lot to do. And then that takes us back around to the Perfectamundo double white azalea. So I still have my work cut out for me. I have to clean up the circle bed, and that is more than just removing that bark mulch. It's also going to be deciding what plants are going to go in there, and I'm going to use the whole winter season to dream that up. I'm not going to rush anything. It's early October, but you know, we're fast approaching where it's probably going to be time to stop planting. I seem to not be able to stop planting, but I have to stop at some point so that I can start doing more of the fall chores, like adding compost to the beds, remulching where I need to remulch, and so on. So I'm going to be doing the circle bed and tackling that over the winter time. This bed, I am going to be adding the composted cow manure all over this, along with some soil in spots, just to beef up this bed. It really needs it. And then we're going to give it a remulch with playground mulch, just like I use up in the front beds. That mulch is undyed, it's undyed, not dyed, and there's nothing in it but wood chips. So it's really going to be beneficial to the soil as well, because it does break down, unlike these pine bark chips, which I wish would have broken down, but they did not. So thanks for coming on this garden tour with me, and watch this video next if you want to see more of a deep dive of the front yard, of what worked and what didn't. And until next time, happy gardening.